Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late today. Maria, would you mind sharing any pre-submitted questions with me, please? I not had a chance to look at any of our pre-submissions ahead of time. Is that George? Well,
we don't have any pre-submitted questions for today.
Well, we do have George on. All right.
Yeah, I don't have any pre-submitted questions.
Okay. All right, everyone. No pre-submitted questions today. So please feel free. You guys can use the raise hand function in the Zoom webinar. Type your question out in chat or type your question into the Q&A section. Either way, I will try my best to answer it. Okay, we got a quiet crowd today. No questions so far. All right, and go ahead, Maria. What you got?
Okay, I was going to type it out, but I think you might give up before I get it all typed out. So
you know me so well by now.
We are on version 6.10, I want to say.
Yep, okay.
And we have our dev environment, and then we have an end user server that is also on 6.10.
Okay.
They are planning 2 different projects.
Okay.
One is an update to the existing project, which is in production, and then one is a brand new project.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, we know we need to upgrade to version 7.
Okay.
There's been some debate about timing because the unit that's going to be putting in the project is very conservative with their IT stuff, and it'll take them months before they unwind the changes between 6 and 7.
Unwind the chain, okay.
Meaning like set up what needs to be done, undo any IIS changes, or prepare to get everything approved to change the way it all functions.
Okay, sure.
Okay, we can't just say, oh, do this now. It doesn't work that way. So do you have any suggestions regarding timing of that? So meaning, do you think we should wait and do the upgrade first and then the projects? Or what are your suggestions? The dev server the decisions, so we don't have to make any changes in that part.
Okay, so you have a customer who's running 6.10. They already have, is this the Cash App project? They already have, so the Cash App project's running on an existing 6.10 server.
Correct.
Now you're in you haven't yet, but are going to start construction of a new process for the same customer intended to run on the same server.
That is correct.
Okay, and then now you could build and so you could stay on 6.10, build and deploy that project to the existing 6.10 server, but you want there's discussion about getting current to keep up with support or to get access to some a fix for a feature of some or a new feature or something.
Both. They don't want to be ever out of support, and I don't know how that works. I believe you're still supporting 5, but I don't know that for sure, so I don't want to speak to that.
Yeah, we're trying to wrangle that in a bit in Q1 of this year, and ensure that basically what we're thinking here and about to pull the trigger on is that we'll retain support because we're about to release 8 in Q1 of this year. And so that means our version 7 release is going to shift down to our GA release. Okay. And then 6 becomes maintenance mode, and that we would continue to support if you're on the last version of 6. So you could still get code changes and things. So you could allow customers to run like 6.18 and retain support. That's where we're headed. But notwithstanding that particular comment, I would say you should move to 7 before you. I mean, you could do them. Like the question is, how long is it going to take your customers, like IT or SecOps team, to validate, or the infrastructure guys to set everything up?
That's a good question. Probably months.
Wow. And are you just thinking of you're gonna validate the 7 install? Like so right now you're running so they have a dev and a production, or just a production server?
They have both. So we refer to them as dev. That's ours. That's the one that hosted a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Their dev they call test. So that's the second setup.
Right.
And then they have a prod.
I would say it's probably best you don't have everything's backwards compatible. So if you started building in 6 and then midway through the build upgraded to 7, everything's backwards compatible. Anything you'd hit would be a bug that we would fix.
Okay.
But you might not want to start building in 6 because of some of the new like active form flow stuff that we've showed on these lunch and learns. That stuff, which makes building some of the more sophisticated design experiences for end users, is only in 7. So you can rely on backwards compatibility, but you lose the access to some of the new features if you start in 6 and then upgrade to 7. So if I look at that as my calculus, I would say get upgraded to 7, and then with the possibility that something in the existing project might require a code change, not because of a loss of backwards compatibility, but something might have slipped through the cracks that is not working in 7 like it did in 6. And then after the upgrade, start development. So I could see either way. From my perspective, I think it's better to get and try to stay current. But it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. There's nothing about the upgrade itself that requires your project development to be modified. It's just that you can't get access to really active form flows and a couple of the new features that are in version 7 that are not in version 6. If that makes any sense. I didn't really answer your question. I realize that, but that's the thinking, if you will.
Okay. So my thought was, and this is just me, doing the changes to the Cash App in version 6 while they do whatever approval they need to do for version 7.
Okay.
And then we could do the brand new project strictly on version 7. Because there's no point in creating new stuff in something that's about to become outdated.
Yeah, sure. No, you just have to figure out, make sure, like, are you building and fixing and deploying changes from either your dev server or their test server to production? Or might you need to?
We have one outstanding, they haven't finished testing, but it's very small. So that's
as soon
not
as you upgrade to 7, you won't be able to do that from the server that's running 7. Just keep that in mind.
Correct. Yes.
Then yeah. No, I think that plan makes sense to me, and I think is reasonable.
Okay, and so you said sometime in this quarter, 6.18 will be the lowest maintenance release, or what you will consider the lowest maintenance release. I know you're not going to turn off 5, but I'm not going to give them the option to stay on the lowest version. So
yeah, we want to try to what we're trying to do is balance that we still get support tickets in earlier versions, and it takes support some time to recreate an issue that we know is that we end up finding out is solved in a newer version, with customers who are running older versions needing production support. So basically what we're trying to think through is everyone who's on older versions, we will retain like uptime support. Like we'll make sure if something goes wrong, like we support you getting your production servers up, but like design type support, or I'm hitting an issue in the debugger while I'm building something, like that requires us to stay more current against our technology as we are about to release version 8 and stop releasing version 6 completely and move that into maintenance months. That's what we're trying to do, is balance those competing priorities.
Okay. One more question. I'm personally interested in looking at that process diamond thing. So when 8 goes into beta, do we have an option to just install a local version?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
It
I
won't
would
be any
have to-
different than normal. You'll be able to bring 8 locally and start plucking around on it, and as you
Okay.
could today with 7. So
All right.
100%.
Perfect. Okay.
And even if we were to put it behind some sort of like paywall type thing, we could still through support give you access to those things. So yeah, no difference there.
Okay. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for the question. Okay, what other questions do we have? As always, guys, you can use the raise hand feature, type out your question in chat or in the QA section if you have any questions at all. No questions off limits. Oh, okay. Martin's got a great question here. Let me paste this question into the chat for everyone. Indeed, there is. So here we go, Martin. Question is, how is there a better way to build an XML than concatenating strings and then running that through the XML serialized step? Is this XML extremely dynamic that you can't create a defined type for it at all? Like, do you need?
Well, yeah, it is extremely dynamic.
So you don't have any idea ahead of time what the XML will be comprised of?
I mean, other than the basic header and footer, the contents of it will be dynamic completely.
We're talking about the structure, not just the values, right?
Yeah, correct.
You can't break it down into a couple option, like there's not even a subset of most likely options. What I'm imagining you're doing sounds awful to me, like in a flow. That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, that's why I'm sort of trying to figure out if there's a better way to do this. The structure itself would be the same, but then when we go into, like, there's a few sort of like tables and items that would be different sizes, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't know beforehand how many items in that
Mhm.
list there would be. So that's why I mean, it's not just a template that I need to fill values in. There will be
Right, yeah.
dynamic content in it.
Well, let's look at, so let's just start brainstorming this together since we got a quiet crowd here. And you can poke holes in my reasoning as I get my local to respond to me here.
If you need more specifics on the structure, I could say there will be 3 lists within that XML that
Mhm.
may or may not be present at any time, at any point, and they
Okay.
may or may not have n amount of items within those.
Yeah,
3
sure.
lists.
Understood. So let me create a folder here for myself, and then so when I say this is what 111, and we'll have this at root. Okay, so what I'm going to do is build a flow structure. And actually, can I find XML? Let's see, XML sample with list, XML schema list element, list in XML. How about sample? Understanding XML list, sample content list XML file. That's probably not going to be good. Records. Okay, that should give us a list, right? A list of records here. Is that right?
Yeah,
I'm not. I find reading XML to be difficult compared to JSON. All right, I'm going to create a type from this called dynamic. I'll just call this dynamic XML sample 1. Okay. All right, let's create a flow here. So if I search for XML and find an XML serialized step, I need to get an XML string out. And on this, I can find my sample type I just created, right? Which is, okay. Is it going to, what about record? Record dynamic XML sample 1, which is a record, right? If I look inside of object to serialize and do build data, I should have a list of records, which I can say, oops, sorry, monitor just blanked out on me. Should be able to say build array on, and I can build a list of these up, right? So let's assume I was doing something like, I'm just going to fetch accounts. I'm going to loop those accounts, and I'm going to use an add item to list step here. So add item to list. I guess I do need to declare my list first, which is create data. So I'm going to build a quick flow here. In this flow, I'm going to declare a list of my subtype. Now, my subtype, if I look at this, is a records record. Yeah, that's meta. So I'm going to create a list called records, search for records and find records record and set it to be a list. I'm then going to fetch accounts just to give me some data to loop. I'm going to then come to my for each step and pass the entity results account array into my for each step. And then I'm going to add an item to list. try to format this a little better to make it easier to read. Okay. And then I'm going to pass in my new item. I'm going to say my original list. I'll select from flow and I'll select the records list. I'll change rename to change value on my records list so that every time I loop through this step, I update the list. Now my list type changes, and then new item, I will say build data. Oh, it's still sitting as string. Let me save and come back in. I think I'm on an unstable build at the moment. Add item to list, build data. And now if I come into the item mapping editor, I see item here, which is field list of records. Hold on, let me look. What does our XML say? Records record. Okay, I need to loop. Hold on. I need to look more closely at my data type here. XML record build array, add records record, that's fine. So I'm just going to do build data here. Records record is the list type. Wait. What am I missing here? This was going so well. Records, build data, build array, add a records record, XML sample 1, XML sample 1, XML sample 1, new item is records record. Inside of that is field, which is build array. I change this to build data, which is name and value. I have name. I see. Okay, there's a list inside of a list, right? I see. There's a field is a list inside of a record. Okay, let's just do let's just do a single item list. I didn't realize. I'm exposing my bad XML reading skills here in front of everyone. Okay, new item. And I'm going to build a new item. And I'm going to, in the field, I'm going to build array, build data. And I'm going to select the email address from the account that I'm looping. And I'm going to select, actually, I'm going to set the name to be constant. The name will be email address. And the value is going to be item.email address since I'm looping these accounts. Okay, boom. And now what I can do is pass, instead of doing build array, I should be able to say select value, records. Now, if I debug this flow and I look at my input and output, I've got a null record list. Okay, hold on. Record has nothing. Let me look at record execution 6 here. Yeah, Megan email address. So did it not take it didn't take that change. So change value to records. But sorry, I missed that. View input output data. Okay. So here, this is unfortunately nested so deeply. I now have field. Basically, what I have is a dynamic list of objects in my XML. But coming out, I should have one XML. So let's look at what this thing looks like. If I go to like XML lint and ask it to format my XML for me. So now I have a list of records which theoretically a list of fields inside of those records that I'm getting for XML. So the format of the XML is the same, but the number of records inside of the XML is completely variable based on, in our example, the number of loops that our for each step goes through. And what we're doing is using a data type to do that transformation. Is this helping at all, or is there a peculiarity here that this won't help with?
This is beautiful. So that was just an XML data structure?
Yeah, but you could use any data structure as long as it maps correct. But I did just copy the XML. So what I did is I went and grabbed a sample of our XML off the internet here. And then one of the data types you can create data type integration, XML JSON is create type from XML. You just paste your XML in. Once you do that, you could look at the one we created here. It will then register the data type on your behalf. Then you can then what you look for is it's creating a type called records. And then what I did is in my flow, excuse me, I went and found effectively on the XML serialized step, I found records as my base type, and then I can just build up all the properties of the object using normal flow mapping and let the XML serialized step do the serialization for me. And then you can have lists inside of lists, of course, right? It's just a question of how verbose is the mapping going to be, but the serialized step will take care of all of that XML transformation for you.
That's beautiful. Will, if just a last question here.
Yeah, please.
If it happened that the parent node, I think it was called record in your example, had a property in it, could we also edit that? Like outside of the list before we go?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Like if we edited our XML here, let's just go make an edit to it. Let me use lint so it'll validate for me. So here's records, right? And let's add a new XML node called title, right? And I'll just close title here, I think. Right, and I'll say words, okay? Let me validate multiple possible root nodes found. Okay. Maybe, okay, I need to wrap these in something then. I'm gonna say, I'll create one called master and I'll close master at the end. I think that's what I'm missing here. Okay, close master format. Okay, great. So I've added a single property at the top, right? Now, this is gonna blow up. This is gonna blow up all my stuff. I'm just gonna create a new type here. I'm not gonna break my other type, but let's create a new data type here. XML JSON, create type from XML. This will be called XML sample2. Oh Lord. There's no what? Let me paste this into Notepad and see if there's something weird here. That should be fine. Da-da-da-do. There's no Unicode byte order. Byte order mark. Cannot switch to Unicode. This is the same encoding I was just using. If I get rid of master and records, that's something about me copying around. Just a moment here. I think it's because let me copy this. Records. Master. Master. Close that. Okay. Create type. XML. Yeah, okay, there we go. And then I'm just going to add in my property. I'm just going to call it prop1 and then put ASDF and I'm going to close prop1. Okay, and this will be XML. Oops, XML sample2. And we'll create this. Okay, now I'm going to create a new flow here. And I'm just going to drag in just to show you. I'm just going to find again my XML serialized step. And on this, I'm going to change the type to, I believe it'll be called master. And then if under my object is serialized, if I do build data, you'll notice I get records and property one. And I can just map in property one as I need to, I think that's
Wow.
the question you're asking.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, so we can transform your XML into really a dot into like an object that you can then just map using normal flow mapping. You don't have to care about it at all. And in fact, you don't even have to use a serialized step. If you just pass it to the end step of your flow and then use integration details and select XML, it'll serialize for you. Like you don't have to pass a string out. But
Oh, wow.
right, like the transformation, like you don't ever have to care. The flow doesn't care if you call it via JSON or if you call or send back JSON or XML. You just know you have an object that you either get in and transform and output, or that you build up and then output. If you look at, if we were to configure the integration here, say configure integration API service, say allow all, and then view. In fact, let me really quickly just I'll set master as, since that's the one we're talking about here, as my end step. I'll just call this thing, I'm gonna call it output, and its type will be master. I'll find master, it's a single one. Let me save this and close. And then let me use my view integration details. And what you'll see here is it's going to default to JSON, but under additional options, I can say, no, I want this as XML. And the workflow engine will do the transformation for you. You just need to pass out some sort of what we would call, complex type to the end step.
Right. Yeah, totally forgot about that. Yeah.
So this should be much easier than getting into string manipulation hell, trying to build up some XML stuff.
That's where I was currently at. Thank you, Will.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to help. All right. Anybody else got anything today? Okay, I think we'll call that a day then. We're past the 30-minute mark. So, all right, everyone. Hope you guys learned some stuff today. We talked about, I guess, some best practices about when to upgrade, as well as sort of using defined data objects in tandem with XML serialization to build up dynamic XML objects, either in the flow using serialized or deserialized steps, which we didn't actually show, and then or leveraging the integration itself to specify on the caller if they're sending JSON or XML, so that the workflow engine can transform the data appropriately, transform and send back the appropriate format of data. That's it for today. We will see you guys tomorrow. Maru, who's tomorrow?
Noah.
Noah. Okay, Noah will be here for tomorrow.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.